Welcome to our podcast.
I completely forgot to record.
No, we're getting off to a great start here. Is that brown face? Are we okay with this?
He's one of those people when he starts talking, you just listen.
Yay! The crowd goes wild.
Like a real arrogant prick. That's what I'm going for. An elitist scumbag. Most of this podcast is going to suck, by the way. Hello, and welcome to another exciting edition of Murga Gina Podcast. I am your host, AJ Murga. And today I've got a second timer. She is a lovely therapist and a even more lovely singer. And all the way from Portland, Oregon area, it's Gina Polimeni. How you doing, Gina?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing
great.
Good
to be back.
Thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. And today we are going to be talking all about relationships and the pitfalls and issues that that has to do with. I know, right? There's so much to talk about with relationships. We'll get into some specifics, of course, as we go along. But I'm curious, just to kind of get us started here, what are some of the biggest issues that you see with couples and people in general with relationships today? Because things have really changed a lot over the last 20 years, and we'll talk about that as well.
First, I love working with couples. It's like some of my favorite work. I love providing a neutral space and just really helping people understand one another. Because there's something different about when you work with somebody individually, but then when you actually have another person to really work on what's triggering you and what are they reminding you of, and it kind of gets more into the deeper stuff to really highlight behaviors that are happening within relationships. But I think the biggest piece that I find that couples struggle with is communication. Mm-hmm. People aren't talking. They think that they're communicating, but they actually aren't. Mm-hmm. They're either passively communicating or they're assuming that the other person should know. Like, oh, if he wanted to, he would, or he should know what I want and what my needs are. Like, that's just a given. But it's like, you're not. Like, why would they know if you've never told them?
100%.
Right?
I laugh a little bit because I know that we both watch the show Couples Therapy, and I love that show. I've rewatched it now, I want to say every season, I think twice, maybe 3 times. And I just laugh because it's like, it's so true. Every episode, there's somebody who's like, oh, well, you know, I'm doing something that means that they should know X, right? Like, and it's just never that simple. It just seems like, Is it really maybe as simple as like a men and women just communicate really differently, or is it more nuanced than that?
I think it's more nuanced than that. I do think that in a lot of ways, men and women interpret things differently. They have different perspectives. Women tend to be more on the emotional side and men tend to be more on the logical side. And there's nothing wrong with that. Right? It's just the way we process. Our hormones are different. The way we operate in life is just different. Our brain works in different ways. But I think it's a lot more nuanced because it's how were you raised? Did anybody teach you how to communicate? Like, how were you communicated to? How did you have to learn how to communicate, right? A lot of people who grew up without their needs being met or grew up in with very emotionally unavailable parents, they learn how to be hypervigilant. I have to know without communicating what the vibe of the room is, right? And then there's speculation on how is this person feeling, right? And that's where that comes from. Mm-hmm. And we're so scared to speak our needs or our emotions that we just assume we know what's going on, but no questions are being asked. There's no conversations that are happening. And the assumptions, the expectations, and the different perspectives is where we get in trouble.
So it sounds like there's a ton of projection going on, and it really is specific to the individual and how they're raised. And is that kind of what develops your attachment style? Early on, the way that you develop your brain and the way that you're raised and all of your, circumstances and outside influences, is that kind of where attachment styles come from, or what else?
Yeah, so attachment style. So first, I just want to say I'm not an expert on attachment styles specifically. Sure. I know the basis of attachment style. Mm-hmm. So the basis of attachment style is our nervous systems and our behaviors essentially adapt to our caregivers as we grow up. And based on how we grew up and how our nervous system reacted in those relationships, the behaviors that we developed, it impacts how we have relationships in the world. Mm-hmm. And we usually fall into one or two categories. We're either anxiously attached or avoidantly attached. Mm-hmm.
And
Big percentage of us are anxiously or avoidant. There's a like secure attachment
yeah.
is having healthy communication, being able to set healthy boundaries, like learning how to do that. And I think that comes from a very healthy parent child relationship.
And that's the goal, I'm sure, that all of us want to have a secure attachment. But and I know the fourth one, according to Google anyway, is the disorganized, the fearful, avoidant. But do you see do you see people as a combination of maybe all three or all four, or some people are a combination of two? Can it depend
Hmm.
on the circumstances as well and what their issue is?
I think some people can, there are people who can swing from avoidant and anxious. I can swing from avoidant and anxious. Like before I became more secure, I definitely would swing to the two
Mm-hmm.
based on the type of energy that I would attract. I think the reason I said anxious and avoidant is because
Mm-hmm.
those are the main ones. And then
Sure.
under avoidant, there's dismissive,
Mm.
fearful, and disorganized, right? So there's
Right.
like levels under the avoidant piece.
Right.
But
Okay.
yeah, I think that we can. So for instance, I would attract partners that maybe were emotionally unavailable,
Mm.
that wouldn't choose me. And I learned as a child that I had to fight for love. I
Mm.
had to self sacrifice for love. I had to give and give and give and give to get my needs met,
Mm-hmm.
right? And because of that, I would attract partners who were emotionally unavailable,
Mm-hmm.
who wouldn't choose me, and I would like like anytime I'd feel like they were rejecting me or they were going to abandon me, that's when my anxious attachment would get triggered,
Mm-hmm.
and then I would become obsessive about the relationship, or I would text them all the time, or I need my answers met. And it's like you kind of want to like grip your claws into people to like not make them leave.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're anxiously attached and you're attracting an avoidant, the more you lean into the avoidant, the further away the avoidant gets because their style is that that feels like they're losing independence. They get scared of the emotional closeness. It doesn't feel safe on their nervous system. It feels suffocating. It feels too much. It feels overwhelming. And so they're like, oh my gosh, this person's too needy. They need too much for me. I can't give it. I'm going to lose myself. And so
Mm.
they pull away because they're not used to the closeness. And
Yeah.
that's the anxious piece.
Mm-hmm.
For me, the avoidant piece was if there was a guy who was giving me a lot and my nervous system wasn't healed, I'd be like, oh, I don't want to be with, like, there's something wrong with this guy. Like, I would
Yeah.
then become the avoidant of, like, this
Yeah.
is too much. So, like, I could swing back and forth between anxious and avoidant. And I do think a lot of people can experience that based on what their nervous system is attracting.
We're all just a version of Goldilocks looking for that perfect porridge is what we are, right? Not too warm, not too cold. No, I'm kind of like laughing on the inside here because as you're describing all of this, I can relate completely, of course. Like I think a lot of us can, or maybe all of us, but in some ways. But I'm realizing that like, I've done a lot of work on myself and my past traumas as a child and whatever over the last couple of years. But as you were talking and explaining this, I'm realizing I don't think I've done enough or very much work on my relationships, and that could mean romantic relationships, but that could also be my relationships with my parents. That could also be my relationships with aunts and uncles, who used to be a big deal in my life when I was a kid, and I hardly talk to anymore. So, do you see a lot of that too? Like the different types of relationships, not just romantic relationships, like what kind of stuff do you see, in that space?
So what I do with my clients is what I work on is yes, there's things that need to be worked on in their present relationship, but really it's the core wound of where it all developed. And most of us have a father wound and a mother wound,
Mm-hmm.
right? And what that means is like we can feel either abandonment. There can be abandonment issues if parents divorced,
Mm-hmm.
you can feel abandonment, right? If your emotional needs weren't met, there can be a fear of rejection or not being worthy or not feeling loved enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's this part where needs are not getting met. So we learn to attune,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's called attunement when we're trying to attune to what our parents remember. In one of our podcasts, we talked about co-regulation.
Mm-hmm.
So as a child, you're trying to learn to co-regulate to your parent because you don't know how your body works, you don't know how your brain's working, you're learning to adapt.
Right.
And if you need love, if you need validation, which are some of the big things that we need, there's like needing to feel safe and secure. But if your parents don't know how to do that, you're now developing these unconscious core beliefs which have started in childhood, right?
Yeah.
And those things are carried. So then we get in relationships, and usually the partners we choose mimic a caregiver of some sort, right? And if they're mimicking the caregiver, they're triggering the scariest parts of ourselves, like the wounded parts, the parts that we try to avoid.
Sure.
But we blame it on the other person instead of looking at it as, oh, maybe there's some wounds I need to heal from my childhood that were developed with my parents.
Yes.
I need to go back and allow myself to feel, work through, recognize those patterns, forgive, which then will actually help me move through and become more secure in my relationships, because I won't be so scared of the abandonment. I won't be so scared of being rejected. I won't be putting all of my validation and what's approval in another person.
Yeah, it sounds like just that's too much power to give another person, but we do so subconsciously, unconsciously, whatever, all the time. And is that also something that you think we learn from childhood? Because obviously our parents have so much power over us as kids. Do we just continue to kind of sleepwalk through life, giving power away to, people that we get into intimate relationships with, whether it's platonic or romantic? What do you think?
I think that's tricky because I think the power that like you're talking about power, and I'm actually glad you brought that up, but it's also there's our past has power over us.
Mm, mm.
So
Well
what
said.
happens is we learn that, oh, I need to be more hyper vigilant. I need to be more hyper independent because I can't depend on other people. So we actually develop more survival strategies
Mm,
that we think are helping us
hmm
and creating more confidence and independence. And then we project this false identity, false self confidence,
hmm
false self love, false worthiness,
hmm
which is why sometimes you can meet people and they're like, I'm really confident or I love myself, but you watch their behaviors and it's like, well, that doesn't really line up. Like,
hmm
it doesn't feel like you actually believe it.
Right.
And it's because this survival strategy has come out. But what happens is whenever we interact with anything that triggers that wound,
Mhm.
it then has power over us. So until you can face the wounding instead of avoiding it, it will always have power over you and it will always control your life moving forward. So I don't think it's as much as we're putting power in other people. Like that's just a survival skill of like, in order to get love, I need to
hmm
people please. I need to do these things. But it's more the power is in the wound. The control is in the wounding, not so much in the other person. But yes, that's what it can look like.
That makes perfect sense, honestly. So instead of giving our power away to somebody else, it's more like our wounds having power over us, and we're kind of submitting to those when we get triggered by them. And I can
Avoiding them too.
avoiding them
The
too.
more we avoid them, the
Uh-huh.
more power they have because we don't want to face it, which
Yes.
gives more, which we're actually less in control.
That makes a lot of sense. So that makes me think a couple of things. But first of all, that's just super interesting to think about. That like all of that power to essentially reclaim that power within ourselves is within us the whole time, right? Like you said, doing work on yourself. Then it becomes not so much giving power away as developing real strength and security from within. The other thing that makes me think of is you said the longer we wait, the more avoidant we are of doing this work. It probably gets harder and harder. Do you work with older generations and see that it is more of a struggle for them to speak their true wants and their true needs and really work through a lot of stuff just because maybe it's been so long, but also too older generations they weren't raised to be able to
Mm.
speak up, right? My mom and dad were very much from the generation of kids are meant to be seen, not heard, and I think that really scarred them. But what do you think about that?
I do. So I work with an array. Like
Hmm
I've worked as young as 21, 22 years old, and I work as high as I think I have a 70-year-old patient right now,
Okay.
actually.
hmm
But the bulk of my clients are within the 37 to 45, 50 range. So
Okay.
it's in this range of their survival techniques are no longer working for them anymore, their
hmm
survival strategies. And now it's just things are just coming out all the time. And it
hmm
feels like you have no control over your life and you feel lost, a loss of identity and a loss of like who you are, right? That's a lot of the clients I meet. And it's because they've been avoiding so much stuff and now all of it's just in their face and they don't know what to do with it, right? But I think a lot of it has to do with what you'll find is people think that they know what they need, but their needs actually have to do more with what other people are needing. If I just know what this person needs, then I know how I can show up for them. But when you ask, like the biggest issue my clients have is I say, what do you need in your relationship? Like, what do you need for yourself?
Right.
Like, what do you need to feel better? Most of my clients cannot identify what they actually need. It's always contingent on the external circumstances, which tells me at some point in their life, whether it was childhood or trauma later on in life, they learned if I learn what this person needs, I will be safe. I just need to figure out what they need and I will be okay. So they never really learned to have a voice. They don't know how to say what they need, say what they feel, set boundaries, and it's out of fear, right? They didn't feel emotionally safe to express themselves. And so, yeah, I think that's a huge piece.
I'm so glad you went there and covered that, because that was actually going to be my question, is like most people, especially of the older generation, I would think don't know the answer to that, you know, and I mean, I was probably in that category until just a couple years ago, or maybe even longer. I don't know. But of course, there are things that we want in life, and there are, you know, ways that we see our life turning out, right? Like I've always had big dreams and goals and things like that in my life. But when you sit down and you ask yourself truthfully, what it is do I need? It is kind of tough to answer that question. And it does that, you said that leads to a lot of like loss of identity and things like that. Is that kind of what you see a lot of, is identity crisis these kinds of days and different forms of that, or how does that play out?
Yeah. And so I'm revamping my business right now. And the reason I bring it up is because one of the things that I realize the way that I work is it's not so much about letting go of who you are, and it's not so much about separating yourself from who you are. It's about remembering who you are, remembering who you have been. So there are aspects of like, I remember when I was a kid and I was like fun and I was like happy all the time and I was goofy and I like to grab my fake mic and sing into it. Like, you know, you remember these pieces of like, wow, I was like a really happy little girl, right? And there was so much freedom and so much fun in that. And like, I like to entertain people and joke around and be like social. At some point, it was lost. At some point, I was taught that I was too much, that I was too loud, that it was too big, right? At some point, I was taught that like I couldn't be that. I needed to be more serious, right? And so what happens is I shut that part of myself that like was authentically who I was. And so the work that I've done throughout the years is not so much about like having to separate myself. It's about accepting some of these painful things and finding that little girl again, finding that authentic part of myself again, right? And I think that's a big piece, is like we have to remember like who we are, because it's been so hidden and so pushed away.
Well, first of all, I can relate completely, because I think about my own life. When I was a kid, I wanted to be an actor. I remember watching Batman 1989 and falling in love with Jack Nicholson as the Joker. And I was like, that's it. That's what I want to do with my life. I want to be an actor just like Jack. And I was actually good, I would say, through middle school. And then it's like, you're right. At some point, something happened in my life, or something happened within me, and I just kind of quit. I just kind of quit acting, and I did other stuff. And I think about that a lot sometimes. I don't know why. I don't exactly know why I that ever changed. But the other thing I think about is, you know, I think we can all relate to, you know, wanting to reconnect with that playful young side of us again, the inner child or whatever. What is the process? I mean, obviously, with not necessarily step by step, but what is some of the ways that we can reconnect with that little playful side of us again? And what's the integration process like in order to actually weave that into who we are today?
That's a loaded question, Andrew. I work with people for years trying to teach
Yeah.
them that.
Well, you know, like whatever
Um,
the cliff notes are of that you want to talk
well,
about.
I think first I want to kind of go back to the identity piece of
Sure.
we create things that we think are identities that are actually patterns. I actually was listening to Hughes, I think. He has a podcast, School of Greatness. He had this guy, Aaron Doty, on there, and he explains, like, he uses people pleasing in his example, but what he explains is that we create these identities, right? We create these identities of, I'm a people pleaser, that's my identity. And he's like, no, that's not your identity. That's in a pattern that you developed to keep you safe, right? And so what happens is we create these identities. I'm an addict. I'm a people pleaser. I'm codependent. And then what happens is like now this is our identity. And so we're like moving through life thinking that this is our identity. So one of the first things that I help people understand is that these are just patterns, these are survival strategies that we have developed to keep ourselves safe, right? So I think the biggest piece is one, we have to create awareness and understand. Like that's the biggest step. And part of that is understanding that there are fragmented parts of our inner child that still have control over us, that get triggered in our daily life. Then we react, and then we don't understand that that's what's happening. So then we shame ourselves for acting in a certain way, and the pattern continues, right? And so what I try to do is I bring awareness, help people understand what their survival strategies are, help them get more in tune with their nervous system. The nervous system is a huge key factor in this, like how the nervous system reacts to it. Once you create more awareness, then you can start changing the patterns. You start doing things differently. We find out the different situations that you need to start showing up to differently in life. Then you start remembering. Because when you finally take that step of setting a boundary, maybe where you need to set a boundary, and you feel that empowerment, you're like, oh, like I do have it within me to do something different. The reason I recommend people start working with people like a counselor or a therapist when you first start this work is because your nervous system is so dysregulated that by yourself, it's hard to understand what safety actually is because there's a piece of a lack of trust within self. And oftentimes we need to work with somebody else to learn what safety feels like in our body. So we can learn to do something different because we're so stuck in our pattern and our nervous systems are so dysregulated. Okay. So that's the first piece I just want to say is that like oftentimes you want to work with somebody before you start doing this to understand it, but also to feel safe.
Yeah.
Right? Because sometimes when we get overwhelmed with emotion, we feel very overwhelmed and it feels very unsafe and it can be hard. The first time I felt deep emotions, I felt like I was going to die. I know I wasn't going to, but I felt that's how deep it hurt, right? Like that was the depth of the pain.
Yeah.
The piece of the inner child is about how do I love that part of myself? The inner child is screaming to be seen. So when parts of that inner child come up in our present day, it's a part of us that's begging for us to see that part that was never seen, that was never heard, that was never acknowledged or loved, right? That never got to be angry when they wanted to be angry, that never got to be hurt when they wanted to be hurt. And so I think of it as like you have to look at it as two pieces. So you have your present day self, and the inner child is kind of separate. It's not really separate, but it's just an easier way to like see it.
Yeah.
Is the inner child's a separate part of us. And when that inner child comes out and they want to be seen, they're angry or they're feeling hurt, we have to be like, hey, I see you. Like, Gina, I see you. I see that you're hurting. You're scared that you're going to be abandoned in this moment. That's old. Like, you're okay. I got you. You're safe. Like you feel the feeling and then you walk yourself through it. That's how you start to re-regulate that part of your nervous system. Allowing yourself to see that part of you and telling yourself that it's okay. Not suppressing it, not dismissing it. But what happens is we start to cry, we start to get angry, and then we're like, I shouldn't feel this way. Stop crying, stop doing this. And what you're doing is you're actually you're dismissing the inner child. So you're actually keeping yourself in shame and just re-triggering this wound of you never being seen in the first place, and you're just making it worse because you keep dismissing the stuff that's trying to come up and avoid it, and it just makes it harder.
And that makes a lot of sense. And again, I can relate. It goes back to what you said about negative coping skills and self-destructive behaviors. It seems like, things that happen in our lives that we want to try and protect ourselves from, or whatever, that we essentially just end up making it worse by re-triggering wounds or making things more difficult. And that's really interesting. Also, too, what you said, really interesting way to look at it is the inner child being something different, a different part of ourselves that we're either compartmentalizing, or to me, it sounds like you almost have to learn how to be in a relationship with your inner child, with yourself, these different parts of yourselves. And that kind of brings it back to what we're talking about with relationships. Is that an accurate assessment, or what do you think about that?
No, I think that's pretty accurate. That's the integration piece.
Mm.
Right? The more
Mm-hmm.
you start learning to love that inner child and seeing that inner child and not dismissing it, but learning how to love those parts of yourself,
Mm-hmm.
that's how the integration happens.
Mm-hmm.
Is the more you love that part of yourself, the more it's going to start to integrate and become more embodied.
Mm-hmm.
And embodiment just means it then becomes a part of you. It doesn't feel so separate, because a lot of times it feels very separate, right? And the embodiment is the integration, right? So what happens is, let's go back to relationships. Let's say I get in a let's take the current person I've kind of been seeing.
Mm-hmm.
Towards the beginning of the relationship, he triggered a big piece of my anxious attachment.
Mm-hmm.
And every time he'd pull away, it would trigger this abandonment wound. And I would just feel like I need an answer. I need to understand. And if I don't understand, it's this like obsessive thinking that kind of happens,
Mm-hmm.
right? He's triggering the little girl in me that felt abandoned, that didn't feel seen, that always felt shut down, that didn't feel good enough,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so every time he would pull away, or wouldn't text me right away, or we would go months without talking,
Mm-hmm.
it would trigger that little girl inside. I didn't understand that that's what's going on. So then what happens? I'm like, he's a jerk, like he's this, like I'm projecting all this stuff onto him. But
Sure.
also what I'm not realizing is that my overly need to communicate, my emotional, like me being so needy with him, it's triggering his avoidant wounds.
Yeah.
He's feeling suffocated. He's feeling overwhelmed. He doesn't know that that's what's going on. I don't know what's going on. I don't know how to communicate that to him. He doesn't know how to communicate that to me. So now we're just pissed at each other, or he thinks I'm crazy and I think he's a jerk. But there's so much more that's going on underneath.
When
right?
really a little bit of both, right? Can it all be true? Can't we all just be crazy jerks? Just a little bit?
We can, but then you'll never have a healthy relationship, because everybody's just going to be like, nobody's understanding what's actually going on, but it's actually a deeper thing that's happening.
We'll never get to be that secure Goldilocks finding that perfect porridge. Yeah, that's.
There's no such thing as, I hate to break it to you.
Oh no.
There's no such thing as perfect, and if you're looking for that perfect person, you're gonna be screwed for a really long time.
Well,
relationships are hard.
Well, that's disappointing on two levels, because one, I'll never be perfect, and two, there's never a perfect porridge, and I've actually never tasted porridge, so I unfortunately now that's just a deflating disappointment. But you raise a philosophical question in my mind now, which I thought was interesting. Do we on some level seek out subconsciously these misery loves company, because that's what we've always known, kind of relationships that end up being toxic and codependent, and of course we don't seek them out actively. We do it because we feel comfortable, because those of us who have grown up in trauma or whatever, that's what we know. And that's at the end of the day, it reminds me of home. Being miserable reminds me of home. So do you see some self-sabotage in relationships in that way as well?
100%. But you're coming at it from the mental piece. It's a subconscious nervous system reaction. Your
Gotcha.
nervous system is seeking what makes it feel comfortable.
Yes.
So if
Okay.
I'm comfortable with never being chosen, never being important, not being valued, like always feeling like I have to give, like learning that love comes with, what's the word I'm looking for? Love comes with like having to give, like Love has to be
Selflessness.
worked for. Like
Okay.
I have to work for love,
Gotcha. Okay.
right? It has to be this hard suffering. I
Oh,
have to suffer in order to be loved,
like earned.
right?
You have to earn your love.
Earned.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
So if I learn that at a young age, right? I'm subconsciously, my nervous system knows that when I meet somebody, if they're giving me attention and love, my nervous system's like, what the fuck is going on? Like, I don't know if I can cuss on the podcast, but I'm
Of
going
course you
to
can.
because that's
Yeah.
what it is. Like, what the fuck is going on?
You
Right? The
obviously
nervous system.
you obviously didn't watch any episodes with Lisa Will.
Oh,
Sorry
wait,
to
I
interrupt.
didn't. I'm pretty sure she did cuss on
Oh
that.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay, good. I feel better.
Mm.
The nervous system freaks out
Mhm.
because the nervous system isn't used to calm,
Mhm.
right? Until I start working on the nervous system,
Okay.
right? So then my nervous system is wanting the chaos. It's wanting the like, I have to earn love. I have to earn love.
Mhm.
So a lot of my work has been understanding that I am worthy
Mhm.
and that it should be more balanced. Like relationships should be more balanced. Communication, like, okay, he doesn't know these things. I need I need to share these things. I need to communicate these things with this other person.
Mhm.
And then he gets to decide whether or not he wants to show up in that way, right?
Mhm.
But it's like I have to rewire my nervous system. Then what happens is like now my nervous system does not like the unpredictability. My nervous system does not like the chaos because
Gotcha.
I've rewired it into more of a neutral state,
Mhm.
right? So for me, chaos, toxicity, like any kind of thing like that is like feels ugh to me. Like
Sure.
because I'm like my body, because I see the dysfunction in that,
Mhm. Mhm.
right?
Yep.
And so it's actually your nervous system that is unconsciously attracting
Mhm.
somebody that's going to continue that pattern,
Mhm.
that's going to continue because that's what my nervous system wants.
Right.
It
Right.
feels comfortable there.
That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. And that kind of makes me think, or it makes me wonder, is that kind of the name of the game when you're trying to become, this confident, secure person, like looking at yourself as all these different pieces of yourself and essentially working on those pieces to create a whole foundation that you might stand on. I know another kind of abstract thought that you just gave me, but if when I first started therapy, for example, let me back up a little bit. When I first started therapy, it felt overwhelming. Like, how am I going to heal all this trauma in one fell swoop or whatever? But once I realized you can start breaking it down into little pieces, a section at a time, a person at a time, an era at a time, whatever, it got easier. Then it's just like climbing a mountain one step at a time, and so is that kind of the name of the game with some of this stuff, is to kind of break it down and take it easy and take some of the pressure off, or and how do we relate that to relationships, if that's even something that you see?
First, there's no quick fix to this
Sure.
stuff.
Sure.
Yes, there are antidepressants, anti-anxiety medications. Those technically are just band-aids for a deeper issue that's really going on,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so part of it is it's going to take time.
Mm-hmm.
But what I tell people, my clients, is if we can identify your core wound and your core survival strategies,
Mm-hmm.
because most of us revert back to the same things for multiple situations.
Mm-hmm.
If you can understand your patterning and understand how it's showing up in your body, so getting more connected to the body,
Mm-hmm.
understanding that, it's going to help you change patterns.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to be willing to do something different. I think a lot of people, when they've been so hyper vigilant or they've been so independent and they haven't been able to trust people,
Mm-hmm.
and their story has been like, I can't depend or trust anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Like now you're hitting kind of a barrier of like, if I'm giving you suggestions and you're not doing those things,
Mm-hmm.
that's not like, you have to want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to want to make those changes in your life. And it's hard and it's uncomfortable and it's scary. But those changes are what's going to break the pattern and your life is going to start being different from that point moving forward.
That makes a lot of sense too, and it makes me think actually of our last podcast, which if you guys have not checked out, you should check out. We talked a lot about the body keeps a score, PTSD, a nervous system, and at the end of the day, you said curiosity was key. You know, curiosity was a big deal in this process of healing, and it sounds to me like a lot of what you just said that made me think of get curious and don't be afraid to step outside of your comfort zone. And I think that's easier said than done when you add another person into the mix, getting back to relationships, right? It's so much when you have another person that you feel responsible for or protective of or whatever, or you love so much, it can be hard to want to be outside of your comfort zone when you have another person. Does that make sense?
It does. And what comes to me is like, we think that it's hard, but is it really?
I don't
It's
know.
just, it's because really what it is how do we get curious about our partner?
Mm-hmm.
Because most of the time, I would say, I would bet a high percentage of people just make assumptions in their relationship, but they really don't know the truth.
And that makes
They're making assumptions based on their own experiences.
right.
And so if you have done something over and over in a relationship, and every time you do this one certain thing, your partner reacts in a certain way, okay? But you have to look at, did I really ask a direct question? Did I really tell them what I needed? And did I get curious? If you're not doing any of those things, of course you're going to have an assumption that like, oh, well, if I do that, they're just going to react this way. But it's really about how do you approach the communication differently? Because if you don't know how to communicate and you're saying, well, you do this and you do that, that automatically puts up defense.
Yes.
When you're coming at people, they can't hear you. They're not going to do anything different.
Yep.
All they're thinking is like, I just need to survive this conversation.
Well,
Right?
you pretty much just covered what I was going to ask, but with communication, because it sounded like the key to good communication is curiosity without any judgment. You know, like if I want to understand my wife, I mean, you know, we've been together for 16 years now, so I mean, we do know a lot about each other, but still, we have to work on our communication sometimes. You know, I can't just assume I know what she's thinking because I definitely don't, and she will remind me that I don't. But yeah, it just seems like getting curious about yourself, but also curious about your partner seems like such a big deal.
It is. If that's how we build healthy relationships. But the other piece to that is you have to understand your own body and your own patterns, which is why if you're in couples therapy, each of you should be getting your own therapy to understand yourself even more
Sure.
and how we all have a part.
Yeah.
We all have a part.
Right.
I don't care, even if you're in an abusive relationship, we have a part in it. And that's very controversial. People do not like that. They don't like to think that. But at some point we do have a part.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
And so it's like we also have to look at how we're contributing to that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. I completely agree. It's not my place to judge other people, period, but it's certainly not my place to feel like I can understand, from a woman's point of view, what it's like to be in a situation of domestic violence, because I'll never personally be that person in that position. Although I will say I grew up as a child in a household of domestic violence, and so I do know like what that situation is like. I don't know what it's like for a wife, but I do know what it was like for my mom, and so I can honestly say that there is a part that's played by all of us, because I was not the perfect child. There were times when when I maybe made things worse for myself, but also too in the moment you don't know that. You don't know what you're doing. You're just trying to survive. So does that make sense as well? Or
Yeah, I the reason I want to stop you is because I'm going to ask you a question.
Yeah, please.
You don't have to answer it.
It's okay.
It's a very personal question.
We'll turn to live therapy here on the spot.
You do know what it's like to be in an abusive relationship where you are on the other side of a woman being abusive to you. Do you not?
Yeah, I think so. If I'm being perfectly honest with myself, there was a relationship that I had before, about a year or so before my wife came into the picture, 16 years ago now. which is crazy. But yeah, and again, it was a very toxic relationship that I very much had a part to play in. And at that point in my life, I was an adult. I was 25 years. I
Mm-hmm.
was 25 years old or whatever. And it was, yeah, it was one of those things where it was, I think, looking back on it, and a perfectly disastrous attachment style thing that burned hot and then burned out really, really badly. And it
Mm-hmm.
was one of those situations where, yeah, I have to be honest with myself and say that I was, just as at fault as she was, I think.
But I think the reason I'm bringing that up is
Hmm.
because I think it's really easy to think that like women are the only people that are in abusive
Yeah.
relationships when it is the other way. I think the difference is that for men, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think for men it's harder to admit if they're in an abusive relationship because there's this masculine piece of
Yeah.
I'm weak
Hmm.
if I'm allowing myself to be treated this way, but really it comes from a wound.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think you're right. And at the end of the day, it felt comfortable to me because it was
Mhm.
reminded me of similar abuses that I had as a child, and it was also, I hadn't gone through my awareness yet. I hadn't gone through therapy yet. I don't even know if I had gone to therapy at all at that point in my life. And I definitely needed to. And I that was one of the catalysts though that did start a new level of maturity for me. After that fell apart, I really took a hard look at myself and was like, why was I in a relationship like that? Like, why did I put up with any of that? And also too, why did I do some of the things that I did? Why
Mhm.
did I respond the way that I did? Because that certainly wasn't healthy either. And you're right, there is this, like, especially when I was 25, like, I did not want to admit it. I wanted to be like, oh, she's crazy, and I'm just going to move forward.
Mhm.
But now that I'm, almost 20 years later, I'm 40, 43. I can look back and say, yeah, like, I was lying to myself, and I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to live that way anymore. And so, was it weak to admit that? No, I mean, I don't think so. But that's the way that I saw it at the time, and I do think that is a problem with toxic masculinity today, and always has been. You
Mhm.
don't want to admit when you're weak, especially compared to a woman. Like, there was a woman that I gave too much power, and boy, did she abuse it. And that's essentially what it boils down to. And but now I feel much more confident in saying, like, that was something I needed to go through in order to get
Mhm.
myself to where I am today and become the man that I am today.
Mhm.
And I'm happy to talk more about it if you have other questions.
No, it's just I think it just shows. So like if I therapize this, like if you
Please.
look at it, her reactions to you could also be her trying to gain power back from a place that she maybe lost
Mm,
power or control in a relationship with a man,
yeah.
and see how it go. Like
Yep.
it's not because you were bad to her. You didn't treat her bad. Like I witnessed that. We were roommates at the time. Like
Yeah.
I witnessed that whole relationship.
Right.
So
Right.
like
Right. Right.
I was seeing what was going on, and it wasn't that like it was just these moments where it was like her pain would come out and it
Hmm.
would come out on you. And so it's like that's what I'm saying is
Hmm.
relationships are complex and they're complicated
Yes.
because there's so much more going on,
Hmm.
but we don't understand these inner child parts of like where it's coming from.
Hmm.
So we take it as fact in the present moment,
Yes.
or we take it as like this is really what's going on for me in the present, when it's like there's two things going on.
Hmm.
There's a
Hmm.
present you, but there's also this wounded past inner child part of yourself that's coming out, that's trying to fight for themselves or to be seen or whatever it is. So that's where relationships get complex. And
Yep.
then what happens is we end up hurting each other in the relationships, and then it's like, is it too late to heal, or can we both commit to each other to work through, if we're
Yeah.
both committed to working,
Hmm.
to like working through our stuff and acknowledging how we're contributing to each other, triggering each other,
Hmm.
and how do we start having more conversations?
Yep.
So when you do something that triggers me, can I tell you before it gets to that point where we're then hurting each other and abusing each other?
Yeah, and again, I mean, I'll bring it back to my life and experiences. You know, I was in a relationship kind of similar to what you just described as well when I was just out of high school. You know, in high school and just out of high school, it was on and off for like 6 years. And she was a wonderful person. We were just not good for each other. You know, there was a lot of me triggering her deep wounds and her triggering my deep wounds, and I was still very much, you know, caught up in the trauma that I grew up in, you know, still not quite on my own in and out of my parents' house. And it was just a perfect disaster, you know, but what you just said was we tried to make it work. We tried to make it work for way too long, you know, and just because you fall in love at a young age and you think it should, you know, you want that to be your one and only love forever, right? The first time you fall in
Mm-hmm.
love. And so you want to hold on to that for so long, and in my case way too long, you know, and hers as well. Like eventually it just got to a point where it's like, okay, enough is enough. Obviously it's not going to work anymore and you move forward, but I imagine you probably have to amplify that by 100 when you've got a couple that has children. They've been together for 20 some years or whatever longer, and they've been trying all this time, and it's almost like the more time, the longer you try, the harder you try, the more you want to double down on pushing through that toxicity or whatever. Do you see what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think what happens is so a lot of the couples I'm working with now, like I start working with them and there's progress that's made.
Mm,
But then what happens is you take like 3 steps forward, 2 steps back because it's uncomfortable,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
right? You get so uncomfortable in the new discomfort
Yeah,
that you're like, it's almost like you have to revert back
yeah.
to like almost feel relief
Mm-hmm,
because it's a process,
mm-hmm.
right? It's a process and it's difficult, but I mean, it's relationships are just really hard.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
take a lot of like they bring up so much. Like as you were talking, I know this is kind of burning, but as you were talking, I was thinking about my relationship that I was in for 4 years. I at the end of the relationship, it was with an addict who
Mm-hmm,
was on and off in his addiction.
mm-hmm.
And what I realized towards the end of the relationship, at one point, he was standing at the counter doing something, and I was like, "Oh my God, I'm in a relationship with my mother during the divorce."
Mm-hmm.
How I had to show, and it was the first time I had this like
Yeah.
epiphany of like, and nobody told me that.
Mm-hmm,
Nobody told me that. I mean, I was working with a therapist at the time, but it was just very blatant of
mm-hmm,
like, oh my God.
mm-hmm.
And then after I got out of the relationship, I was doing some like Al-Anon work before I got into therapy again. And what I realized is like, okay, well, what's my part in the relationship? I wasn't being honest about my feelings.
Mm-hmm.
I was being just as dishonest as he was. It just looked differently. And that
Yeah.
hit me because I was the victim in the relationship. He
Right.
was the one that was stealing. He was the one that was doing these things.
Mm-hmm,
He was the one that wasn't committing fully and it was all his fault. I was
right.
the person that was paying for everything and doing well, first of all, I never set boundaries. That's on me.
Gotcha.
Right?
Mm-hmm,
I wasn't sharing how I felt. I
mm-hmm.
wasn't having expectations for, like, I wasn't being like, listen, if you're going to live here, this is what you need to do.
Right.
Right?
Right.
I wasn't saying any of that stuff. So, like, I was being just as dishonest and I was
Right.
enabling the whole behavior, but I was the victim.
You were allowing
Do
yourself
you
to be a doormat. Yeah.
Yes,
Mm-hmm,
but do you see how it's like when you start to see how you
mm-hmm,
contribute in those relationships,
mm-hmm.
it's like it's so it like takes the breath away and
Yes.
you almost get angry at yourself. There's this like
Mm-hmm.
self anger that kind of comes out because you're like, shit,
Yep.
like
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing this to myself this entire time.
Yep.
And then that's when the change it's a hard process, but when you see those things and then you start to learn to show up differently,
Mm-hmm.
it's like it's so freeing, like
Yep.
to be able to learn how to communicate in such different ways.
Well, you make me think of something, and I'll raise a question to you because bringing it back to relationships because I have been off the market for so long. I can relate to what you just said internally, like with my own actual growth, just myself, not in a relationship, because of a lot of the awareness that I've gained and maturity that I've gained and emotional, intelligence that I've gained over the last few years, it seems like every level that I up whatever you call it, raise up to a new level every time I gain some awareness. You have to readjust, reacclimate, and get comfortable at that new level. I always felt like, okay, this is amazing at first. Like now I feel so much better, and more calm with my nervous system. And then for a while, there would be a period once that kind of, deflated a little bit, there would be this period of, oh, now I just want to hermit and get comfortable here. And then eventually you raise again, right? Because you keep doing the work and moving forward. Is it similar in a relationship, like when you come together on something, find some common ground, or things do improve, like you said, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back? Is there usually, do you find that there's this uncomfortable period where, like you said, they're learning to get this new baseline, learning to be this new way of life and comfort?
Yes. And I think it's for different reasons. The first reason I think is there's one person in the relationship that's like, you need to go get help and you need to go get fixed
Mm-hmm.
and you need to change this, right? When it's like you both need to be doing the work.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Because it's the same as like when an addict gets sober, their family members need to get help as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're changing the dynamic of the relationship.
Right.
And so as one person starts to change and the other person stays the same, you're going to keep hitting the same walls because the other person doesn't think that they need to look at some of their stuff or how they're contributing to the behaviors of the other person, right? We're all contributing to the behaviors. And so both people, I think, need to be getting help, but it's the same thing of like, we have to go together in relationships. If one person is growing and the other person is staying stuck, at some point, you're going to start reevaluating the relationship.
Yeah.
Do I want to continue to be in this relationship if this person isn't willing to change?
Right.
I'm doing all this work to change, to understand myself more. Now I'm seeing more patterns in the other person, but they're refusing to show up, or they're refusing to do the work themselves, or they're refusing to show up in these new ways. Now there's this like, well, why am I doing this if we're not doing it together? So sometimes you reach that point where it's like you outgrow the other person, and then you're like, can I stay in this relationship knowing that we're kind of in different points of our growth stage?
Yeah.
The other piece is maybe you guys grow together, and at some point you reach this piece of being like, wow, we are not in alignment. We want different things in life, right? So, and then sometimes if you continue to decide to choose each other and you're growing together, then you're like, great, we're doing this together. We're choosing each other. We're like, there's so many different things that can happen. I think that's what people get scared.
That makes
Like
sense.
if we do the work, are we going to stay together? If he does the work, or if she does the work and I don't do the work, are they going to outgrow me and we're not going to stay together? Right? There's so much fear that happens because you get so comfortable and like, well, we'll just stay here. Right? And like, I've been there. I've been there recently too, where it's like, can I stay knowing that there are some aspects that are not aligned?
That's a tough question to present to everyone. I feel like at some point in life we have to look in the mirror and ask ourselves that question, and not just maybe about our relationship. Maybe it's our job. Maybe it's maybe it's just something that we're doing. Like, because you can look at a career like a relationship. This is a marriage to a job, and if you hate your job, why would you want to stay in it? If you hate your relationship, why would you want to stay in it? But there are it at the end of the day might not be that simple if you add in children, or one person is 100% financially dependent on the other, especially these days, with everything costing so damn much. So that's a tough one.
If you have an abandonment wound.
Yeah.
It's not just about like the kids, and it's like one, you have to understand why am I staying in this? Isn't about them. Why am I staying in this relationship that maybe isn't the best for me? Like, what is it feeding me? What is it giving me? What is it creating within myself that I'm used to? Like, what is this belief system I'm living by that's keeping me stuck here?
Yeah. And that makes me think self-awareness. The more self-awareness that you grow, the better you can evaluate the answer to that question and your own life and so on, and Yeah, because that's a question that each individual has to answer for themselves. Probably, like I said, about many different things in life over the years, and I'm not in a place to judge anybody for wanting to stay in a bad
Mm-mm.
relationship for whatever reasons they might have, or because again, I've done it before as well, but I did it more out of unawareness and just because I thought that's what you do, right? Like when you grow up seeing seeing almost nothing but bad relationships everywhere you turn, you eventually get to a place where you think, well, that's just the norm. That's the baseline, and then you hear these statistics where like half of marriages today get divorced or maybe even more. It can turn a person very cynical very quickly.
I think I want to just correct like when we say bad relationships, there's like shame in that.
Sure.
So what I like to think of it is like they're not necessarily bad relationships, they're patterned relationships,
Gotcha.
right?
Yep.
So like when we say they're bad, then it's like there's this, oh, I'm bad for staying in this. Like there's all this extra shame and stuff that's coming on when it's like, okay, I'm in this relationship. What is this relationship teaching me? What am I here to learn? What do I need to know about what's happening right now? Right? I come from a belief, and not everybody believes this, but this is how I believe. I don't believe there's right or wrong decisions. And that's a trap that a lot of people get caught into, right? I need to make the right decision and just brain, like, what do I do? I need to make the right decision. What if I choose this and it doesn't work out? Like, I look at it as a path. And let's say you're hiking and there's two paths and you're like, oh, I think this way takes me where I want to go, right? And let's say you start going down that path and you're like, shit, I didn't get to where I wanted to go. I actually need to be like over here. You find a path and you go to the other way, right? It's everything's teaching us something. Everything's a growth opportunity. And I know that's it's a very like glass half full mentality, which, some people struggle with, and that's fine. But it also takes a lot of pressure off. When I started thinking that way, it was when I was in the relationship with the addict. Like, I started thinking that way of like, there really isn't a right or wrong decision. Like, no matter what, I'm going to get through this. And then I'm going to find my way back to like where I need to be. Right. And I think changing that mentality helps us. And it takes pressure off of like, if what I'm doing isn't working for me, why not try something different?
Yeah.
If I'm looking for happiness and if I'm wanting to be better, why not try to do something different? Who knows? Maybe I'll actually be happier by making this decision.
Well, I like the way that you said that, because bad being a bad word essentially makes a lot of sense to me, and having the shame attached to the way to look at it is like, oh, you're right, I made a bad decision, a wrong decision, and it isn't that easy. Life is not that easy. Relationships are not that easy. You do the best in the moment with the information you have and the awareness you have, and also too the options that you have. So that does make a lot of sense to me, and changing your perspective on it, how to see the way that you navigate life as well as relationships and everything, probably is a big piece of the puzzle. Changing changing your beliefs to not self-destruct and shame yourself and things like that. That seems like a really big piece, but also maybe one of the more difficult ones.
Oh my gosh, it's so different because if you're 40 some years old and you're trying to change your beliefs and your patterns, like you're changing a whole life's worth. Like, but that's the beauty. The brain is so incredible.
Yeah.
You create new neural pathways. You can literally change the biology of your body.
It's crazy.
Like, it's amazing. It's so fascinating. So it's like, if you think about it, I always use the example of, okay, think of creating new neural pathways as if like, are you right-handed or left-handed? Are you right-handed?
I'm right-handed, yeah.
Okay, so if I were to be like, Andrew, I want you to pick up a pen and write your name in perfect cursive right now with your left hand.
Good luck.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so, however, if a left-handed person were to come in and say, let me show you how I hold the pen, let me show you how I hold the arm, now practice.
Sure.
Like, practice the strokes, practice how you're doing this, practice. Like, it'll take some time, but eventually if you practice and you do the things that you need to do and listen to suggestions, eventually you'll probably be able to write your name in cursive with your left hand, right?
Sure.
You're creating, when you do that, you create a new neural pathway in your brain, right?
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
So it's the same thing in this work. Yes, it's work because you have to practice. It's building a muscle, like, right? You go to the gym to build muscle. It doesn't happen overnight, right? It takes time, it takes energy, it takes practice. You have to, it's the same thing with healing, is that like you can create those new neural pathways. You are not set in stone. Just because you have this belief system, it is not finite.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it takes time and it takes work, but you can shift that. That's why, like, you may be in a relationship and being like, shit, like, I don't know if I should be in this. But if you talk to your partner and you're like, listen, this is where I'm at. Like, I love you. I want to be with you. I want to work on this relationship with you. This is what I need. And if that person is like, yeah, me too. Okay, it's gonna be an uphill battle. But if you're both working at it, you can create the relationship of your dreams if you're both willing to work at it.
Sure.
It just takes time and dedication.
Sure. Makes a lot of sense. And, the relationship of your dreams, I have to laugh a little bit because what does that even look like, right? You said that there was,
different for everybody.
yeah, you said there was no perfect porridge. So I'll push back a little bit on that relationship of our dreams. I don't even
Wait
know.
a second.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to push back because you just made an assumption. Our beliefs are different.
Yeah.
To me, perfectionism and relationship of your dreams are two different things.
Sure. Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I see what you're saying. So my relationship of my dreams might be a little too
Perfect.
too perfect and ridiculous. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
That's the piece of like,
Yeah.
I didn't, like just work, but I'm using this as an example
No, it's
of
a perfect
like
example.
how we just, my idea of like the relationship of my dreams might be very different from yours.
Yes.
Because I might be wanting different things than you want in a relationship.
Yes.
So like having more space in my relationship, like let's say that's something maybe I wanted.
Right.
Like that might be different than you wanting to like be with the person every single day.
Yeah.
Like there might be differences of that. Like my relationship of the dreams is different, but it's not perfect. It's never going to be perfect.
No, that makes perfect sense. And I think what you just did there was a great example in the moment of better communication skills, right? Because you caught me assuming what you meant by that, and I was trying to think, well, what do I even mean by that, or how would I answer that question? That's really what I was doing in my head, but I didn't see it as, oh yeah, I'm kind of projecting into, the perfect relationship for me means the perfect relationship, period, right? And I imagine that happens time and time again in most
All the time.
relationships. Yeah. More times than you can count. Well, I want to pivot slightly, if you don't mind, because you brought up something earlier that I found fascinating. You said that one of the youngest people that you work with is 21, so a generation below us, Gen Z, I think, right? Do you find it different because they're younger today in today's world with social media and online dating and just the difficulties of like, people don't go out and meet each other in real life anymore. It seems like they meet each other online and then that becomes their persona. Do you find different difficulties for younger people in a lot of the stuff that we're talking about? And if so, how so?
Yeah, because like you said, they're not really meeting in person. So one, they either aren't meeting anybody.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or they're doing dating online and they're meeting random people, but there's not a lot of substance to it. Or there's a lot of like, I think podcasts have to be very careful, and like with social media have to be very careful because we can overuse words, right? And we use them, I think, in incorrect context, and then it becomes this like trend, right? And I think that's what the hard part is, because take love bombing, for example. Sure. Oh, this person is love bombing me. Or this person is anxiously attached and they can't control that obsessive nature because it creates a safety for them, right? Like it's just this thing of like we overuse these words without trying to understand the possibilities behind them, or like judging people for it or having these stigmas around those. But I think the younger generation have a hard time because they're not I mean, we went to we were meeting
Yeah.
people in bars. We probably had more one night stands. Like,
Mm.
we were a
Yeah.
lot more promiscuous, I think, in
Yeah.
our day
Yeah.
than I mean, I think you have people who are still doing the same thing,
Sure.
but I would say it's a lot scarier. Like if I have a client who tells me like they're meeting people online and they're meeting up with them or whatever, I actually get a little worried for them
Hmm.
because I'm like, ooh, like
Yeah.
you don't know if this is the person behind there, like you
Hmm.
haven't met them in person,
Hmm.
like there's a lot of things that like I kind of get scared about for them,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
Because I'm like that's a slippery slope because you hear lots of instances,
Hmm.
you see all these documentaries out there where there are people who have gotten assaulted or
Yeah.
murdered or whatever by meeting people online. And so I think you can't live your life in fear. However, I think there's ways to be more safe about what we're doing
Hmm.
to create more safety for yourself, safety and security.
And that makes sense, especially in the physical realm. My brain went to the more mental piece in terms of self-esteem. Like, if it's
Mm,
really difficult to meet people, period, in person, because you're right, in our day we had much more trial and error. There was go out there and try and talk to girls and get rejected constantly, but eventually, something's going to happen for you. That was the normal routine every weekend, right? Go out there and actually try and meet people. Now it seems like it's much more structured. You can do it from the comfort of your home. You can do it on your phone in an app. And so therefore I would think, I don't know, I would think that it creates this maybe like level of perfectionism that you can't really attain to. And what I mean by that is the fact that, well, if we don't align on all these things, if I have this checklist of boxes that I have to check, and we don't align on certain ones, then I'm not going to go and waste my time and attempt to talk to this person because I already know they don't check these boxes. When in our day, that wasn't the most important thing, especially first
mm-mm.
off, face to face. You want to see if you just connect. You want to see if you vibe. You want to see if there's an energy and a feel that this other person has for you. You don't, I can't imagine you get that online. The vibe, the feel. But do you
Well,
see what I'm saying?
I love that you brought this up because I've heard podcasts about this. Like I'm not an expert or I haven't really done a lot of research or anything about the online
Sure.
stuff. I know bits and pieces, but one of the biggest things they say is that it's like, okay, so let me ask you a question. Let's say you go into an ice cream shop and they have chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry,
Oh boy.
right?
Is that all?
Let's say there's only three, right? Chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
It's easier to make a choice.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
If I gave you 50 options on the board, you're gonna be like, oh my, like
Yeah.
that's how I feel. I'm like,
I'm gonna
I
say.
go into a place
I'm gonna
like
ask if I
thrift
can combine
shopping,
flavors.
right?
Yeah.
It's like there's almost too many options.
Yeah.
So
I
what
see what
you're
you're saying.
constantly saying is like, okay, if I don't like bubble gum, I always have blueberry. If I
Yeah.
don't like blueberry, I always have Marionberry. If I don't like Marionberry, I always have vanilla,
Yeah.
right? But what
Hmm.
it comes down to is people are looking for this perfection 100%.
Hmm.
But I've heard a lot of people also talk about, and what I've noticed myself is, okay, what if this person has 80% of what I want in a relationship?
Yeah. Hmm.
Can I give up the 20%
Yeah.
or try to work on the 20%, but I'm getting 80% of the needs met
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Or do I want to wait out for that person that has the 20%, but now all these things are not being met?
Right.
So you're never going to get a person that has 100% of what you want.
Yep.
And that's where the work of the relationship comes in of, okay, we both are missing we're missing things within our relationship.
Yep.
Like, can we work on meeting each other's needs there? I think this just came to me right now is Esther Perel. If y'all don't know who Esther Perel is, like, she's amazing. I love her stuff. But she talks about how we put expectation on, if I'm with this person, they need to meet all of my needs.
Yeah.
That is unrealistic. There's no person in this world that can meet 100% of your needs.
Right.
So how do you be okay with like, my partner meets these needs and then I have these friends over here that meet the spiritual needs for me, or
Hmm.
that I go do like retreat work with these people
Hmm.
and not have the expectation that my partner has to do that,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So it's like, how can you have people in your life that still meet maybe the needs that maybe your partner doesn't meet, and being okay with that and understanding that.
And I think that's a really good way to think about it. And again, I think it boils down to perspective with what you just said, because from my point of view, when you first raised that, okay, they've got 80%. I mean, that's pretty good. 80% compared to 20 they don't have, at least on this checklist. Do I but then on some level you're thinking to yourself, well, do I want to compromise? Before I even go and meet this person in real life, I'm going to be settling, I'm going to be compromising on that 20%. And do I really want to do that? Or, like you said, hold out for somebody with 85% or 90% or 100%? At what point do you say, okay, I don't, on some level, I don't get to choose who I fall in love with. I really do believe that we don't choose who we fall in love with. I think love
Our
just,
nervous system does.
yeah, I kind of think like love is one of those things that just kind of happens, and for lots of different reasons. We could talk about that a whole another podcast.
I'm just
But
being silly.
no, I agree with you on some level for sure. But it's not so easy, right? Like love is very difficult to define and very difficult to figure out how it even happens in the first place. But I can't imagine that you can do that by looking at somebody's attributes on an app.
No, you have to like meet somebody, right, in person. But even then, it's like, I think the piece that's I've done online dating, and I think what it is people can portray themselves a certain way through text message or through writing. We perceive the messages a certain way through the writing. So we create an idea of what we think this person is going to be. Then we meet them in person, and maybe it's like Love is Blind, right? You meet them in person, there's an energy that happens when you meet in person, right? It doesn't mean that you can't grow in love. It doesn't mean you can't grow to like that person. But if you're meeting this person for the first time, they don't fit the picture that you had in your head, you're automatically discounting them because it's not meeting what you thought it was without meeting them in person. So I think there's a big miss with that. Like, you're not giving it really a chance to possibly grow. You're going off, oh, my nervous, like, this person could have, how many people have you said where he meets all the boxes, but I'm just not that into him, right?
Yep.
It's like, well, because that's a nervous system thing. That probably isn't about him. This is more about you. Like, you need to look at like what's going on here and why that makes you so uncomfortable.
Right. And there are probably other things in real life, like attractiveness level might be one thing, or something else that you might be attracted to. Like, for example, I know with my wife, it was my humor, my sense of humor. We really connected right away. And that was one of the things that she fell in love with first. She also said my eyes. She said your sense of humor and your eyes were the two things that really attracted her to me. And you don't get that necessarily from just a photo or a description of, oh yeah, I'm funny. Like you can say that on your profile, but it doesn't really connect the same because everyone's sense of humor is different. And so you don't really know that until you get into a situation where it comes out, and it has to come out in the right way too. I can tell you the exact moment that it happened for my wife and I. We were sitting at a coffee shop outside. It was at Cornerstone in McMinnville, back when they were still alive, and a ridiculous car drove by, and it had like no muffler whatsoever, and they were like really playing into it. They were bam bam bam, the loud music and all that stuff. Like they were wanting attention there on 3rd Street, and we both laughed in the same way and had kind of the same like teasing joke that we did. And it right away I was like, oh, okay. I was like, if we can make fun of that together, we can make fun of a lot of other things together. So you know what I mean? So our sense of humor really clicked, and I just don't see how you can do that with online dating and without getting out there and actually trying to give other people a chance to get to know who you really are. And the last point I want to get to with this point is there are other things under the surface rather than just your attributes or your profile description that matter more sometimes. Sometimes that 20% that you're missing really at the end of the day matters more in here on the inside. It matters more on to your nervous system, to your heart, to your alignment moving forward than that 80% of just whatever it was, right?
But how many people do you think are actually going to before they make the decision, how many people do you think actually go to their partner and say, hey, I'm really missing this in the relationship.
Right.
And one thing that's really important to me is that you compliment me
Yeah.
when I dress up and I look nice.
Right.
And like that would be a huge shift for me. Like how many people are actually going to their partner and saying that to see, let me give this person a chance to even try to meet these
Yeah.
needs.
Yeah.
Most people are not doing that. Most
No.
people are just assuming like, well, they're not that, and they don't allow for an opportunity of growth. And I think that's the biggest piece that we're missing
Yep.
is that a lot of people, they're missing that 20%, but they're not actually communicating. That's what they're needing to make the relationship feel more whole. And that's a piece that's missing.
That's
The
that.
communication.
Really glad you said that because like, you know, I've considered myself in a very good relationship, but even that would be scary. Like it is scary sometimes for me to be like, honey, I don't, you know, I need more. I need something different, whatever it is. And I know that she struggles with the same thing with me. Like sometimes it's scary to kind of like rock the boat, to put yourself out there, to feel like maybe you're asking too much of the person that you love most. You know, things like that. But I think at the end of the day, it goes back to like what you said. It's our own wounds. It's our own, you know, insecurities that we have to deal with, and we have to be honest with ourselves about what is most important to me in my life, and is the relationship that I'm currently in align with that? Yeah.
Well, and there's patience within that too. So let's
Mm.
say you go to your wife and you're like, honey, I need this
Mm-hmm.
to shift to feel more connection with you.
Sure.
You think about how long it's taken you to change. You're asking this person to change essentially
Right.
to meet a need. Not in a bad way. You're asking them to
Right.
like
To grow together.
to meet an yes. Here's the thing, you have to be patient.
Yeah, of course.
You got to give it time. You can't be like, well, it's been 2 months and you haven't done anything or you haven't even tried.
By 6
And
p.m.
it's like,
Saturday, you better be perfect.
right? I'm going to
Yeah.
give you 3 months. And it's kind of like, well, you're asking them to maybe change something very significant that is hitting one of their core wounds. And so you got to kind of you have to be patient with that. And you gotta give some grace if this is the relationship you want to stay in, if you're willing to work at the relationship.
Right.
And I think the other piece is, I was going to
Oh no, it lost. Oh no, that has happened to me like 5 times.
I hate
on
when
this
that
conversation.
happens. But like, I mean, I think that's a big piece is just the communication and asking them to like meet those needs. And I think that's lost. I think that's lost and giving them patience for that.
Yeah, and that's probably across the board. That's probably not just a young person problem, to stop, you know, shitting on them for a minute. That's probably just across the board. We all, I think, are probably guilty of not admitting to ourselves what's most important, as well as, you know, like you said, having the strength to communicate our actual needs in life. Well, I love that you brought this topic up, and I want to be mindful of your time and start to wrap up here.
I remembered what I was going to say.
Okay, please.
And the other piece is the reason it's important to be connected to your body and understand your own body and your emotions. It's because oftentimes when we are struggling within ourselves, we put our expectations and our needs dependent on this is the fine line of like, what do I actually need from my partner? And what expectation am I putting on my partner to fix me, to make me happy, to make me feel better? Because if you're putting that on somebody outside of yourself, you're always going to be disappointed and it's never going to be enough. They could meet every single one of those needs, but it's never going to be enough because you're avoiding something inside of you that you're expecting somebody else to fix.
Yes.
And so it's a very fine line of like, I need to make sure, is this thing I'm going to be asking for from my partner? Is this something I actually need on a regular basis in the relationship? Or am I putting an expectation on them to fulfill or fill up something inside of me that nobody else can do except for me?
Yes. That's a
big, like, you have to be very careful with that as well, which is why the work is important.
Yes, that makes perfect sense. And I'm glad that you said that. And again, to kind of start to wrap up here, I think you wrapped it up, in my opinion, in kind of a beautiful place of hope, you know, because if you can tackle some of these issues from within yourself, and you can, find the curiosity and the strength, and the to be communicative. That's such a hard word to
Mm-hmm.
say. To be in good communication with your relationship with your partner, then it does seem like you can grow together. And first off, anything else that you want to say about anything we didn't talk about? But also too, I guess one of my last questions would be, how do we take some initial steps, or what are some things that maybe we didn't talk about that we can do in order to try and grow together?
So first, I just want to say, I love love.
Yeah.
My superpower is love.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that is like, I believe I've been given this beautiful gift where I get to see people without judgment, in full acceptance, provide a safe space for them to be witnessed and seen in themselves without judgment. And like, what a beautiful, I used to think it was a blessing and a curse, and now it's just a blessing. Like, I love love, and I believe in, if you really want to do the work, like beautiful things can happen, especially in relationships.
Hmm.
And I think relationships we forget are hard. We think they're easy, but it's about like continuing to choose each other. And that includes, even if we feel shit on or even if we feel hurt, how can we continue to choose each other to work through it together
Hmm.
as partners, to continue to make the choice to want to be better in our relationships?
Hmm.
The biggest piece one big epiphany I had last year, it was at your house actually. I came to visit you and Jen,
Right.
and I had this big epiphany of like, I was wanting the person at the time that I was seeing to meet my needs, hear my emotions. Like, I want you to do this. You're not doing this. It was very much this thing. I want you to fit into this box. I want you to hear me. You're not listening to me. You're not seeing me. And it was me, 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 me. It was this very like me narcissistic thing. By the way, we all have narcissistic tendencies.
Yes, I agree.
Nobody is free of that. Okay.
We're going to do
We'll
another
talk about that
podcast.
another
Yes.
podcast
Yes, a
for
few
sure.
upcoming
But anyway,
podcast about narcissism, so stay
yes.
tuned.
But like, and it was all about like, and I had this epiphany of, you know what? I'm expecting him to like meet all my needs, but he's been telling me what he wants, and I haven't been accepting it.
Hmm.
I haven't actually been hearing him,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? And so the biggest piece I would challenge people is, yes, you have needs that want to be met. What does your partner, start asking yourself, what has my partner said to me that they need?
Hmm. Hmm.
Has my partner told me what they need?
Hmm.
Like, I want my needs met, but am I listening to what this other person needs as well?
Hmm.
Because relationships are about meeting each other.
Hmm.
Some compromise. Like, right? Some days somebody might be able to give 80%, the next day 20.
Hmm.
But it's about like, am I focusing only on what I need and what my needs are and how they're not getting met and the expectations I have? Or am I actually taking time out to think about, what has my partner told me that they need? What has my partner said that they would like or that they're missing?
Hmm.
Like, that would be the first step. That in itself can dramatically shift the relationship.
That makes a lot of sense. Hmm. Yeah, yeah, and I remember that, first of all, when that happened for you. But and what an eye opening thing to be able to, you know, be honest with yourself and have a moment of clarity and be like, oh, like, I'm not showing up in the best ways that I possibly can. So therefore, why should I be expecting them to show up and give me their best all the time as well? And like you said,
Mm-hmm.
it is about meeting, and I like how you said meeting someone somewhere instead of compromise. Like, yes, there is compromise at times in a marriage and in a relationship, of course, but I like the idea of growing together and meeting people where they are and finding common ground much more than just compromise. Compromise sounds like a bad word, just like bad, right? That's how I feel personally about it anyway. But
I agree. I mean, I think there's other ways to say it for
sure,
sure.
sure.
I think the other piece is,
It'll come to you.
just give me a minute because it was good.
Yeah.
Oh, the other piece is, because the first thing I did when I realized that is when I talked to him on the phone, I was like, first of all, I want to apologize.
Mm.
the other thing that people in relationships don't realize is that we're human and we make mistakes. Can you take account? We all have to be able to take accountability of how we fucked up, of how we maybe haven't shown up as our best selves, or maybe how we haven't been listening or haven't been showing up in a way that the other person has been asking us to do, or trying to force somebody to do something, right, without showing up in that ourselves.
Yes.
And the first thing I did was I apologized and I said, you know what? I'm going to take accountability for this. And it's not to like make it work.
No.
It's more of just like, hey, I want you to know that like I have been trying to force you into a place that I know you don't want to be. And I apologize for that. And you take accountability for that. Taking ownership and accountability in relationships, game changer.
Yep.
But you have to be careful that you're not just people pleasers and
Yes.
overgivers struggle with that, because they oftentimes apologize for things that they shouldn't apologize for.
Yes. And that's where
Right.
you
So
probably...
it's
Yeah,
the
that's
growth comes in.
That's where you need somebody like you to probably
Yes.
do the work with and figure out who your authentic self and build that foundation of secure confidence and move into that secure relationship piece.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, is there any other topics, we've been talking for about an hour and a half and we've covered a lot. This has been a great conversation. Is there anything glaring that we missed, or should I tell them about some of our upcoming stuff?
Yeah, maybe our upcoming stuff. I mean, I think we covered a lot. I mean,
think so.
With every topic that we're going to talk about,
Yeah.
there's so many layers.
There
But
is.
if you think about it, and as you watch these podcasts that we're having, everything's going to come back to the same thing.
Yes.
Self-awareness, regulating your nervous system, and healing the wounds that are keeping you stuck and controlled by the past. Like, those are the core things that you want to let go and work on. And so I think there's just going to be a continuous pattern. But
Spoiler alert.
if you are in a relationship and you want to work on your relationship,
Yeah.
couples counseling is great. Find a counselor that can be neutral and do your own work. You need to be doing your own work individually as well as with each other.
And you work with couples, you work with individuals, and you can work with people online. So Gina's information will be in the description below, and we will continue do these lovely conversations. It's always great to see you, and thank you for joining me again today, Gina.
Thank you for having me.
This was great, and I hope you guys took some value out of this and got something from it. And we will have another podcast coming up soon about narcissism. We kind of unofficially teased that a little bit earlier, but we've also got lots of podcasts planned out coming up very soon. So this will be almost a weekly thing for us. I'm not sure that they're going to be released every single week, but mostly. I appreciate you, Gina. Great seeing you again.
Thank you.
And thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on the Murga Gina Podcast.
Sounds good. Bye. We're just pissed at each other, or he thinks I'm crazy and I think he's a jerk.
When really a little bit of both, right? Can it all be true? Can't we all just be crazy jerks? Just a little bit?